The brave rancher woke up to find his unexpected reward, a beautiful Apache wife. John Miller woke up each morning before the sun even touched the hills. The ranch had been in his family for generations, and from the time he was a young boy, he had learned the value of hard work and responsibility. The wooden floorboards of the ranch house creaked under his feet as he stepped out of bed and looked around the modest room he called his own. The walls were simple but sturdy, decorated with old photographs of his family and a few paintings of the landscape he loved so dearly. There was a small wooden table by the window where he kept a notebook full of notes about the ranch, his cattle, and sometimes thoughts about life. Outside, the sky was a pale pink, and the air carried the crisp freshness of the morning. John loved this part of the day. Everything was calm, peaceful, and full of promise. Birds chirped in the distance, and the faint rustling of the wind through the tall grass made a soft, comforting sound. This was the moment he felt most connected to the land, to the ranch, and to himself. He dressed quickly in his work clothes, sturdy jeans, a worn shirt, and boots that had seen many seasons, and stepped outside to begin his day. The ranch was large, with rolling hills, grazing fields, and a small creek that ran along the edge of the property. John walked toward the barn where his horses and cattle awaited him. The animals knew him well. They had grown up with him, and he treated them with care. He started with the horses, checking their stalls, brushing their coats, and making sure they had enough food and water. Each horse had a personality, and John had learned to understand them over the years. Some were calm and gentle, others restless and full of energy, but all of them responded to his quiet presence. After the horses, John moved to the cattle. There were dozens of them spread across the fields, grazing peacefully. He spent time walking among them, checking for any signs of illness or injury. He knew every cow by sight, and over the years, he had developed an almost instinctive understanding of their behavior. This part of his work was important to him. It wasn't just about maintaining the ranch or making a living. It was about responsibility, care, and respect for life. He often thought about his father, who had taught him the same lessons, reminding him that a rancher's job was not only to tend to the land, but also to the animals that depended on it. Even though John loved his work, there was a quiet loneliness that lingered in the back of his mind. Most of his friends had moved to nearby towns or started families of their own, and he often found himself eating dinner alone, staring out at the hills as the sun dipped below the horizon. Sometimes he would talk to the animals as if they could understand him, and in a way they did. They offered companionship, but he longed for a human presence, a partner who could share his joys, hardships, and dreams. Despite the loneliness, John found contentment in the simple rhythms of ranch life. He enjoyed the challenge of the work, the satisfaction of a day spent well, and the beauty of the land around him. He was known in the nearby town for his honesty, courage, and unwavering dedication to the ranch. People respected him, and some admired the way he managed the property almost single-handedly. But admiration and respect could not replace the warmth of companionship. At night, as he sat by the fire after a long day, he often thought about the life he wanted to share with someone, a life filled with laughter, understanding, and partnership. John's mornings were always busy, but he had a routine that brought him peace. After feeding the animals, he would take a short ride across the property on his favorite horse, a strong and patient stallion named Thunder. Riding across the fields, feeling the wind on his face, and watching the sunrise over the hills made him feel alive and free. It reminded him why he loved the land and why he had chosen to dedicate his life to it. He sometimes imagined sharing these rides with someone special, someone who could enjoy the simple beauty of the ranch as much as he did. After his ride, John would return to the ranch house for a simple breakfast: eggs, bread, and coffee. He would sit by the window, looking out at the hills while he ate, planning his day. Some days involved repairing fences, checking water supplies, or tending to crops in a small vegetable garden he kept for himself. Other days were spent mending tools, caring for sick animals, or preparing for seasonal work. Each day was different, yet each day carried the same sense of purpose. John found meaning in this work, and he took pride in the fact that he could keep the ranch running smoothly. Evenings on the ranch were quiet, often filled with the soft sounds of nature. The sun would set slowly, casting a golden glow over the fields and hills. John would sometimes walk along the creek, listening to the water as it flowed over the rocks. He enjoyed these moments of reflection, thinking about his past, the lessons he had learned, and the future he hoped to build. He remembered the stories his father told him about the family's history, the challenges they had overcome, and the values they had held dear. These memories gave him strength and a sense of connection to something larger than himself. Though John's life was simple, it was not without adventure. He faced challenges almost every day, weather, unpredictable animals, and the occasional illness or injury. But he met them with patience, resilience, and courage. He had learned to rely on himself, to trust his instincts, and to never give up, no matter how difficult the situation. This resilience had earned him respect in the community and gave him confidence in his ability to handle whatever life threw his way. John often imagined what it would be like to share this life with someone else. He dreamed of laughter in the barn, conversations over the fire, and shared rides across the hills. He imagined teaching a partner the ways of the ranch, showing them the beauty of the land, and learning from them in return. These thoughts were comforting, filling the quiet moments with hope and possibility. He didn't know if or when this person would come into his life, but he held onto the belief that it was possible, that his hard work and patience might one day be rewarded with love. As the night fell and the stars appeared in the clear Arizona sky, John would often sit outside, wrapped in a blanket, gazing up at the vast expanse above. He felt small yet connected to the world around him. The land, the animals, and the quiet beauty of the hills made him feel at peace. Yet, he knew that his life could be even richer with companionship, someone who could share in the wonders of the ranch, the triumphs and failures, and the quiet moments of reflection. Though he had never spoken much about it to anyone, John carried a quiet hope in his heart. He believed that love might come in unexpected ways, that life could surprise him when he least expected it. This hope was not desperate or impatient. It was steady, like the rhythm of the ranch itself. It gave him strength, made him kinder, and reminded him to live fully in the present while remaining open to the future. In the early hours of another morning, as the sun began to rise over the hills, John stood at the edge of the field, looking out at the land he loved so dearly. He felt the familiar mix of contentment and quiet longing. Life on the ranch was hard, but it was good. It was a life built on dedication, honesty, and care. And though he didn't yet know how, John felt certain that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. He continued his morning routine, tending to his animals and his land, all the while holding onto a hope that one day he might find not just a partner, but a companion who could walk beside him through the challenges and joys of life on the ranch. This hope carried him forward, day after day, as he worked under the sun, cared for the animals, and looked out over the hills that stretched endlessly into the distance. Little did John know, life had plans that were about to unfold, bringing a gift he had never expected, a reward that would change his life forever, in ways as beautiful and surprising as the land he cherished so much. One bright morning, John set out on his usual ride across the hills, leading Thunder along the narrow trails that wound through the tall grass. The sun was warm on his back and the wind carried the soft scent of wildflowers. The hills were alive with the quiet sounds of nature, birds singing, insects buzzing, and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. John loved these moments. They made him feel free, connected to the land, and ready for whatever the day might bring. As he rode further from the ranch, John noticed something unusual near the creek at the edge of the property. A small group of people had set up a temporary camp. Curious but cautious, he guided Thunder closer to get a better look. There he saw a group of Apache women gathering herbs and tending to their horses. Their presence was calm and purposeful. Each movement seemed deliberate, respectful of the land around them. John had encountered travelers before, but this group felt different, more at home with the hills than he had ever seen anyone be. Among them was a young woman whose presence immediately caught his attention. Her dark hair was tied neatly, and her eyes held a quiet strength and warmth that seemed to reflect the land itself. She moved with grace, checking the horses and arranging bundles of herbs, always alert yet peaceful. John felt an unexpected pull toward her. He did not know her name yet, but something about her made his heart beat a little faster. As John observed from a distance, a sudden sound of rushing water interrupted his thoughts. The creek, swollen from recent rains, was rising quickly, threatening to wash out the trail. The group of women seemed unaware of the danger, focused entirely on their tasks. Without hesitation, John spurred Thunder forward, guiding the women and their horses towards safer ground. His calm voice gave instructions, and his presence brought reassurance. The young woman Yana, as he would soon learn, noticed him only when he was close. She paused, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. John dismounted, approaching with open hands and a gentle tone. "The water is rising. We need to move quickly," he said. His words were simple, but they carried authority, kindness, and care. Yana nodded and began organizing her companions, her eyes briefly meeting his in silent acknowledgement. Together, they worked to guide the horses and women to a safe patch of higher ground. It was hard work, requiring patience and coordination, but John found himself surprisingly energized by the effort. He was not just helping strangers, he was part of something meaningful, a shared moment of trust and cooperation. Yana's presence made the work feel lighter, as if her calm energy balanced his own determination. Once everyone and every horse was safe, Ayana approached John. Her expression was calm but inquisitive. "Thank you for helping us," she said. Her voice was soft, but there was a quiet strength in her words. John smiled, brushing sweat from his forehead. "It's nothing. The creek can be dangerous. Better safe than sorry," he replied. They exchanged a few more words, simple at first, about the weather and the trail, but each word carried a growing sense of respect and interest. In the following days, John found himself thinking about Ayana more than he expected. He wondered who she was, where she came from, and what her life was like. The hills, which had always been his refuge, now seemed alive with the possibility of meeting her again. He continued his daily routines on the ranch, tending to his cattle, feeding his horses, and maintaining the land, but a quiet excitement lingered in his heart. The simple rhythm of ranch life now included the anticipation of encountering Ayana once more. One afternoon, John rode to the creek intentionally, hoping to see her again. As he approached, he noticed a familiar figure moving among the horses. Yana was there, carefully inspecting the animals and organizing supplies. She noticed John and gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that brought a smile to his face. He dismounted and walked closer, introducing himself properly this time. "I'm John," he said, offering his hand. She took it with a gentle but firm grip. "I am Ayana," she replied. There was a pause, a quiet moment of understanding passing between them, as if both recognized that this encounter was more than coincidence. Over the next few days, their meetings became more frequent. John and Ayana spoke about simple things at first: the weather, the animals, and the land. John shared stories about his ranch, the challenges he faced, and the satisfaction of a day's work. Ayana told him about her travels, the herbs she gathered, and the traditions of her people. They listened to each other with genuine interest, each conversation deepening their respect and curiosity. John found himself learning not just about Ayana, but about a culture he had known little about. In turn, Ayana was fascinated by his dedication, resilience, and the way he cared for the land and animals. Their friendship grew naturally, without rush or pressure. John admired Ayana's intelligence, her patience, and her ability to move gracefully through the world. Ayana respected John's strength, his kindness, and his unwavering commitment to his responsibilities. Together, they shared moments of quiet laughter, helping each other with tasks, and exploring the hills and streams around the ranch. Each moment spent together built trust and understanding, forming the foundation for a bond neither had anticipated. One day, as they sat by the creek, John asked Ayana about her life before this journey. She spoke of her family, the lessons they had taught her, and the importance of respecting nature and the traditions of her people. John listened carefully, fascinated by the wisdom in her words. He realized that Ayana's life had shaped her into someone strong, thoughtful, and compassionate. He shared his own story as well, the challenges of running the ranch, the lessons from his family, and the quiet loneliness he sometimes felt. They spoke openly, honestly, and with mutual respect. The more time they spent together, the clearer it became that their connection was special. John felt emotions he had never expected, a warmth and curiosity that drew him toward Ayana. She, too, felt a growing admiration and trust in him. Their friendship was not hurried but steady, like the slow but certain flow of the creek nearby. It was built on shared experiences, cooperation, and the genuine enjoyment of each other's company. Despite the beauty of their growing bond, challenges were present. Language differences sometimes made communication difficult, and both had to be patient and attentive to understand each other fully. John had to navigate his feelings carefully, respecting Ayana's space and independence. Ayana, too, had to balance her trust in John with the caution she had learned from her travels. These challenges, rather than driving them apart, strengthened their connection, teaching them the importance of patience, empathy, and understanding. By the end of the week, John realized that he no longer viewed Ayana simply as a stranger or visitor. She had become an important part of his days, her presence bringing joy and a sense of completeness he had not felt before. He found himself looking forward to their meetings, eager to share the small moments of ranch life, the quiet beauty of the hills, and the simple pleasures of working alongside someone who understood and respected both the land and him. Yana, too, began to feel that her journey had led her to something unexpected. She had traveled far, gathering herbs and learning from the world around her, but she had never anticipated meeting someone like John. His kindness, strength, and genuine care for the land and animals resonated deeply with her. She began to feel that perhaps this encounter was meant to be, a meeting that neither of them had expected but both welcomed with open hearts. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, John and Ayana sat quietly by the creek. They watched the water ripple over the stones, feeling the peace of the moment. Neither spoke for a long time, yet the silence was comfortable, filled with a sense of connection and understanding. It was in moments like these that John realized the true beauty of their friendship. It was not just companionship. It was the start of something deeper, something that could grow into a meaningful bond over time. By the time John rode back to the ranch that evening, he felt a mixture of hope and anticipation. The encounter by the creek had changed something within him. Life on the ranch was no longer just about work and solitude. It now held the possibility of connection, love, and shared experiences. He knew that Ayana had become more than a passing acquaintance. She had become a part of his thoughts, his hopes, and his dreams for the future. Little did John know that this simple meeting by the creek was the beginning of a remarkable journey. A journey that would challenge him, teach him, and ultimately reward him in ways he could never have imagined. For now, all he knew was that life had become brighter, richer, and more exciting simply because of Ayana's presence. And with that thought, he prepared for the next day, ready to continue his work on the ranch, yet secretly looking forward to the next chance to see her again. Over the following weeks, John and Ayana's friendship grew stronger. What had begun as cautious curiosity had evolved into a steady companionship. Each morning, John found himself looking forward to his rides across the hills, hoping to catch a glimpse of Ayana. And each day, when they met by the creek or along the trails, their conversations became longer, more meaningful, and filled with laughter. They shared stories about their pasts, their families, and the lives they had lived so far. John spoke of his childhood on the ranch, the lessons his father had taught him, and the responsibilities he had inherited. Ayana shared tales of her family, the traditions of her people, and the knowledge she carried about the land, plants, and animals. John was fascinated by her wisdom. Ayana seemed to understand the world in ways he had never considered. She could recognize herbs by touch and smell, knew which plants could be used for medicine, and understood the subtle signs of nature that most people overlooked. John, in turn, shared his own knowledge, the rhythms of ranch life, how to tend to cattle, how to read the weather, and how to care for the land. They learned from each other, not as teacher and student, but as equals, each bringing their own experiences and skills to the relationship. Their bond was not built on grand gestures or dramatic events, but on small, meaningful moments. John would help Ayana gather herbs from the hills, and she would teach him their uses. They laughed together when Thunder, John's horse, playfully nipped at Ayana's coat, or when a curious calf followed them too closely along the path. They shared simple meals, often prepared together, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of working side by side. Each day, they became more comfortable with each other, their friendship deepening into a quiet understanding that neither of them had expected but both cherished. As their friendship grew, John began to notice subtle changes in his feelings. He found himself thinking about Ayana during quiet moments on the ranch, imagining what it would be like to ride with her, laugh with her, and share the long, quiet nights by the fire. Her presence brought a warmth to his days, a sense of companionship he had not felt in years. He admired her strength, her intelligence, and her grace. At the same time, he felt a deep respect for her independence and the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. Yana, too, found herself drawn to John in ways she had not anticipated. She appreciated his patience, his dedication, and the gentle way he cared for the land and the animals. She admired his honesty and the way he faced challenges without complaint. Spending time with him brought her a sense of peace, a feeling of safety and belonging that she had not known she was missing. Their friendship had become a source of comfort and joy, and both of them quietly hoped it might grow into something deeper. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, John invited Fiona to accompany him on a ride to a secluded part of the ranch he loved. The trail was narrow and winding, bordered by wildflowers and tall grasses. As they rode together, the silence between them was comfortable, filled with the soft sounds of the horses' hooves and the wind through the hills. When they reached a small clearing by a sparkling stream, John dismounted and helped Ayana down from her horse. They sat together on the grass, watching the water flow over the stones, the light of the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was in moments like this that John realized how deeply he cared for Ayana. Her presence made the hills more beautiful, the ranch more alive, and his days more meaningful. He wanted to share not just the work of the ranch, but the quiet, simple pleasures of life, the sunsets, the laughter, and the peaceful moments by the creek. Ayana felt the same. She looked at John with a soft smile, a gentle warmth in her eyes that spoke of trust, respect, and a growing affection. Neither of them spoke immediately, letting the quiet of the hills carry their thoughts, but the bond between them had shifted subtly, from friendship to something more tender and profound. Over the next few days, John found himself paying more attention to the little things. He noticed the way Ayana's eyes sparkled when she laughed, the careful way she handled the animals, and the thoughtful pauses she took before speaking. He realized that he wanted to protect her, to support her, and to share his life with her. At the same time, Ayana began to notice the kindness in John's actions, the way he made sure the animals were safe, the way he listened patiently, and the quiet strength that seemed to surround him. Their friendship was blossoming into love, not with sudden fireworks, but with a steady, gentle growth that felt natural and right. One evening, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Dark clouds covered the sky, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets. John and Ayana were caught near the creek, their horses restless in the rising wind. Without hesitation, John guided the horses to a sheltered area, showing Ayana where to stay safe. They worked together calmly, their cooperation and trust in each other evident in every movement. When the storm passed, the sun broke through the clouds, casting rainbows across the hills. They sat together, wet and tired but smiling, sharing a quiet moment of triumph. It was experiences like these that deepened their connection, proving that they could rely on each other in both calm and challenging times. As the weeks turned into months, John and Ayana continued to spend time together, learning from each other, supporting one another, and sharing laughter and stories. They discovered mutual interests, from the joy of riding through the hills to the satisfaction of tending animals and caring for the land. They spoke about their dreams and hopes for the future, realizing that their visions of life were compatible in ways neither had expected. John spoke of expanding the ranch, building better fences, and perhaps one day starting a family. Ayana shared her desire to preserve her traditions, to respect the land, and to live a life filled with purpose and connection. Their relationship faced small challenges, as any budding romance does. They had to navigate cultural differences, misunderstandings, and the expectations of the people around them. But they faced these challenges together, learning patience, compromise, and understanding. John began to appreciate the depth of Ayana's knowledge and the importance of her cultural background. Ayana, in turn, grew to admire John's resilience, kindness, and dedication. Together, they built a relationship based on mutual respect, trust, and a growing affection that neither had anticipated but both embraced wholeheartedly. One quiet evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, John took Ayana to a spot he had always loved, a small ridge overlooking the ranch, where the view stretched endlessly across fields, forests, and the winding creek below. They sat side by side, the wind gently blowing through their hair, and watched the colors of the sky deepen. John felt a sense of peace and happiness he had never known before. He turned to Ayana, and without words they understood each other. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining naturally. In that simple gesture, they expressed feelings that words could not capture: trust, care, and the quiet bloom of love. From that day forward, their connection became even stronger. They continued their work on the ranch, sharing tasks, learning from one another, and finding joy in the simplest moments. John began to realize that love was not just about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about companionship, shared effort, and being present for each other in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. Yana discovered that love could be patient, gentle, and grounded in respect, allowing it to grow naturally without rush or pressure. As the season changed, the hills and fields of the ranch reflected the deepening bond between them. They celebrated small victories together, from a herd of cattle safely guided through a storm to a bountiful harvest in the garden. They comforted each other during difficult times, whether it was an injured animal or a challenging day on the ranch. Their friendship had blossomed into love, a love that was steady, strong, and full of mutual respect. By the end of the season, it was clear to both John and Ayanna that their lives had changed forever. What had begun as a chance encounter by the creek had grown into a profound connection, built on shared experiences, laughter, and the quiet understanding that they belonged in each other's lives. They knew that their journey together was just beginning, but they also knew that the foundation they had built, their friendship, trust, and growing affection, would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. For John, life on the ranch had never felt more full. The land, the animals, and the work remained important, but now there was a presence beside him that made every moment brighter. Yana had become not just a friend, but a partner in the truest sense, someone who understood him, challenged him, and shared in his joys and struggles. For Ayanna, the hills and the ranch had become a place of belonging, a home where she could live fully, love freely, and contribute her knowledge and care. Together, they had discovered a bond that was stronger than either had imagined, a love that was patient, enduring, and full of promise. And so, as the sun set on another day in the hills of Arizona, John and Ayanna sat side by side, watching the world around them. The ranch was alive with the quiet sounds of nature, the animals settling down for the night, and the wind carrying the scent of grass and earth. In that moment, they both knew that something extraordinary had begun, a love that had grown naturally, slowly and surely, rooted in friendship, trust, and the shared beauty of life on the land they both cherished so deeply. As the weeks passed, John and Ayanna's bond grew stronger, but life was never without its challenges. The hills and the ranch offered freedom and beauty, yet the outside world sometimes brought skepticism and doubt. Some of John's neighbors whispered about his growing friendship with Ayanna. They were not used to seeing someone from a different culture become so close to a rancher who had lived a quiet life among his own people. Some raised eyebrows and murmured questions about whether their relationship could last, whether it would bring trouble, or whether it might disrupt the familiar way of life in the community. John heard these whispers, but he did not let them shake him. He understood that love, respect, and patience mattered more than others' opinions. Gianna, too, was aware of the cautious glances and polite questions she received when visiting nearby towns with John. She sometimes felt a twinge of worry about how people might perceive her, but she also knew that she and John shared a bond far stronger than the doubts of others. Together, they decided to focus on what mattered, their shared respect, trust, and love for one another and the land that had brought them together. The challenges they faced were not limited to social pressures. Life on a ranch was demanding, and the work could be unforgiving. One hot afternoon, a section of the fence that kept the cattle contained had collapsed. John and Ayanna worked together under the blazing sun to repair it. The wood was heavy, the tools worn, and the work tiring, but they approached the task as a team. John instructed, Ayanna helped, and sometimes they laughed when Thunder, curious as always, nudged at the posts or tangled himself in rope. Through sweat and effort, they learned that their combined strengths made them stronger than either could be alone. Yana was a quick learner. She adapted to ranch life with surprising ease, though she was careful not to overstep or take on more than she could handle. She learned how to mend fences, tend the garden, and even help with the cattle. John watched her with admiration, realizing that her ability to adapt, her intelligence, and her patience were qualities that made her extraordinary. It was not just her beauty that captivated him, but her courage, resilience, and willingness to embrace a life so different from what she had known. In turn, John began learning from Ayanna in ways he had never expected. She taught him about herbs, their healing properties, and how to use them for minor injuries or illnesses. She shared knowledge of the land that went beyond ranching, showing him how to read the signs of nature, the behavior of birds, the smell of the air, and the patterns of the seasons. John found that her knowledge complemented his own, making him a better rancher, a more patient man, and a more thoughtful observer of the world around him. Together, they created a partnership that balanced strength and wisdom, action and reflection, tradition and progress. Not every day was easy. One evening, after a long day in the sun, John and Ayana sat by the fire, exhausted but content. The conversation turned to their families. John spoke of his parents, who had passed on their knowledge and values to him, and of his hope to honor their legacy. Yana shared memories of her family, of lessons in respect, tradition, and resilience, and of the longing she sometimes felt for the people she had left behind during her travels. They realized that building a life together would require patience, understanding, and compromise. Both were committed, but they knew it would not always be simple. One day, a minor dispute arose between John and a neighbor over water usage for the ranch. The disagreement was not serious, but it caused tension in the community. Yana, though new to such disputes, stood by John's side calmly and thoughtfully. She listened, offered suggestions, and helped him find a solution that was fair to both parties. Her presence reminded John that he was not alone, that together they could face challenges with patience and wisdom. This experience strengthened his respect and admiration for her, and reinforced the sense that their partnership was built on trust, understanding, and shared responsibility. Their growing relationship was also a test of emotions. Both John and Ayana felt the natural fears that accompany love. John worried about whether he could truly provide the life Ayana deserved, whether she would be happy living on the ranch, and whether the outside world would accept their bond. Yana worried about leaving her family behind, about navigating a culture different from her own, and about the judgments of others. Yet, through honest conversations and shared experiences, they slowly overcame these fears. They learned that love was not about eliminating doubt entirely, but about facing it together, with courage and patience. The ranch itself became a symbol of their unity. They planned improvements together, discussed new ways to care for the animals, and worked side by side to maintain the land. Each repair, each chore, each decision about the ranch strengthened their connection. The hills, once a place of solitude for John, now became a shared space filled with laughter, cooperation, and mutual respect. Ayana, too, found a sense of belonging she had never expected. The land, the animals, and the work became part of her life, and in turn, she became part of John's world in ways both practical and emotional. One memorable afternoon, John taught Ayana how to herd cattle across a difficult stretch of the ranch. It was challenging work, requiring coordination, patience, and courage. At first, Ayana hesitated, unsure of how to guide the animals without startling them. But John encouraged her gently, showing her the proper techniques, and soon she was moving confidently, guiding the cattle with skill and care. Watching her work, John felt a deep pride and admiration. He realized that their partnership was more than friendship. It was a true union of respect, skill, and shared effort. Evenings became their time to reflect, plan, and enjoy each other's company. They would sit by the fire, sharing meals they had prepared together, talking about the day's challenges and dreaming about the future. They discussed possibilities for expanding the ranch, introducing new crops, or improving animal care. They laughed over mistakes and celebrated small successes. Through these simple routines, they discovered that life's greatest rewards were often found in shared effort, patience, and mutual support. As the seasons changed, John and Ayana faced new challenges. Winter brought cold nights, frozen streams, and the need for extra care for the animals. Spring brought unpredictable rains, muddy trails, and the demanding work of planting crops. Yet in each season, they adapted together. Yana learned how to anticipate the weather, protect the animals, and manage tasks alongside John. John, in turn, learned to appreciate her insight, her patience, and her ability to approach problems calmly and thoughtfully. The ranch became a place where they could grow individually and together, a space that tested their resolve and strengthened their bond. Through these experiences, John began to see Ayanna not just as a partner in work, but as a companion for life. Her kindness, intelligence, and courage made every day richer and more meaningful. Ayanna realized that John's strength, patience, and unwavering dedication created a sense of stability and trust she had longed for. Together, they discovered that love was not about grand gestures or dramatic moments, but about the quiet, persistent presence of someone who cared deeply and shared life's burdens and joys. As the months went by, their relationship became the heart of the ranch. Friends in the nearby town began to see the strength and depth of their bond, and while some remained skeptical, others admired the way they worked together, respected each other, and shared the challenges and rewards of life on the land. John and Ayanna had built something remarkable, a partnership grounded in respect, patience, and love that had grown steadily over time. By the time the next season arrived, John and Ayanna were no longer simply friends. They were partners in every sense of the word. They had faced challenges together, learned from one another, and built a life that reflected their shared values, hopes, and dreams. The ranch, once a place of solitude for John, had become a home for both of them, a place where love, respect, and mutual effort flourished. Through it all, John realized that the reward of life was not just the work, the land, or even companionship. It was a love that was earned, nurtured, and cherished. Yana had become a part of his world in ways he could not have imagined, and he, in turn, had become a part of hers. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated successes, and built a life rooted in trust, respect, and shared effort. The future remained uncertain in many ways, but one thing was clear. Their bond was strong, enduring, and filled with the quiet magic of a love that had grown slowly, naturally, and beautifully. The following months brought a new sense of harmony to John and Ayanna's lives. Their partnership, forged through hard work, patience, and trust, had grown into something deeper. Each day, they learned more about each other, discovering strengths, habits, and dreams that only strengthened their connection. John had never imagined that life on the ranch could feel so complete, and Ayanna found a sense of belonging she had never known before. Together, they had created a world of understanding, laughter, and shared responsibility. One crisp morning, as the sun rose over the hills, John woke early, his mind filled with thoughts of Ayanna. She had gone to the creek to gather herbs, leaving John a quiet moment to reflect on their journey together. Their bond had begun unexpectedly, with a chance encounter, and had grown steadily through friendship, shared challenges, and a growing admiration for one another. He realized that what he had been hoping for all along, a companion who could walk beside him, share his joys, and support him in hardships, was now a reality. When Ayanna returned from the creek, she found John waiting with a warm smile and a small, carefully wrapped gift. "What's this?" she asked, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. John handed it to her, his own hand slightly trembling with anticipation. Inside was a simple necklace handmade, featuring a small symbol that represented both of their worlds, the ranch, the hills, and the traditions she held dear. Yana looked at it with surprise, touched by the thoughtfulness and care that John had put into it. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes glistening. In that moment, words were unnecessary. The gift represented more than jewelry, it was a promise, a symbol of their shared life and growing love. From that day forward, their relationship deepened in ways neither had anticipated. They spent long hours together on the ranch, tending to the animals, repairing fences, planting crops, and riding across the hills. Each task, though sometimes tiring, became an opportunity to grow closer, to share experiences, and to celebrate small victories together. Thunder, John's loyal horse, often accompanied them, a silent witness to their laughter, conversations, and shared efforts. Even the cattle seemed to sense the calm harmony between them, moving peacefully through the fields as the two worked side by side. As the seasons changed, John and Ayanna began to envision a life together beyond the daily tasks of the ranch. They spoke about building a home that reflected both their worlds, a place filled with warmth, tradition, and love. They dreamed of a family, children who would grow up knowing both the ranching ways and the wisdom of Ayanna's culture. Each conversation, though sometimes tentative, strengthened their commitment to one another and painted a picture of a shared future that felt both exciting and comforting. The town and neighbors, who had once been skeptical, began to notice the harmony between John and Ayanna. Some still whispered, but many came to respect the way they supported each other, handled challenges together, and contributed to the community. Ayanna's kindness, intelligence, and willingness to learn about the ranch impressed those around her, and John's steadfast dedication and patience were even more admirable when seen in the light of his partnership with her. Slowly, the murmurs of doubt turned into quiet admiration. One clear afternoon, John and Ayanna walked together to a favorite spot atop a hill overlooking the ranch. The view stretched endlessly across fields, streams, and distant hills, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. John took Ayanna's hands in his, looking into her eyes with a calm certainty. "Ayanna," he said softly, "these months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've changed my world, my days, and my heart. I want us to face everything together, from the quiet mornings to the storms, from the laughter to the hard work. Will you be my wife?" Ayanna's eyes widened in surprise, tears forming at the corners. She had imagined this moment, but the reality was even more beautiful than she had dreamed. "Yes, John," she whispered, her voice full of warmth and certainty. "I will be with you always." In that instant, the bond they had nurtured through friendship, shared effort, and growing love became a promise, a commitment to a shared life filled with respect, understanding, and joy. The preparations for their marriage were simple yet meaningful. John and Ayanna wanted the day to reflect both their lives, blending ranching traditions with Apache customs in a way that felt natural and respectful. Friends and neighbors were invited, and the ceremony took place in a quiet meadow on the ranch, surrounded by the hills, the animals, and the beauty of nature they both loved. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers, the songs of birds, and the soft whispers of the wind, all bearing witness to their union. On the day of the ceremony, Ayanna wore a simple but elegant dress, adorned with small symbols of her heritage. John wore his usual ranch attire, polished and neat, a reflection of his practical yet earnest nature. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, speaking from the heart about love, respect, trust, and the life they hoped to build together. As they spoke, the world seemed to pause around them, the hills and fields echoing their words, and the animals quietly observing as if understanding the significance of the moment. After the ceremony, John and Ayanna spent the evening celebrating with close friends and family. They shared stories, laughter, and music, feeling the warmth of community and the joy of love made visible. John realized that the unexpected reward he had once dreamed of was not just a companion, but someone who made him a better person, a stronger rancher, and a man capable of love in its deepest, most sustaining form. Ayanna, too, felt a profound sense of belonging, knowing that she had found a home not just in the ranch, but in John's heart. Life after their marriage was filled with both routine and adventure. They continued their work on the ranch, facing challenges together and celebrating successes as a team. Each day brought opportunities to grow, to learn from each other, and to enjoy the quiet beauty of the land they both cherished. John taught Ayanna more about ranching, while Ayanna shared her knowledge of the land, herbs, and traditions. Their lives were intertwined in every sense, practical, emotional, and spiritual. Over time, their love became a source of inspiration for those around them. Neighbors and friends admired the way they worked together, supported one another, and handled life's difficulties with patience and grace. Their story became an example of how respect, understanding, and genuine care could bridge differences, unite people, and create something beautiful and lasting. It was a reminder that love, when nurtured and grounded in trust, could overcome obstacles and flourish even in unexpected places. John often reflected on the journey that had led him to Ayana. From the lonely mornings on the ranch to the chance encounter by the creek, every moment had brought them closer together. He realized that the reward of life was not simply in finding love, but in the growth, understanding, and joy that love brought. Gianna had become his partner, his companion, and his equal in every sense, and together they had created a life that was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than either had imagined. Gianna, too, reflected on their journey. She thought of her travels, her family, and the lessons she had learned before meeting John. She realized that every experience, every challenge, and every choice had led her to this place, to a life where she could be herself, respected and loved, while sharing a partnership built on equality, care, and shared purpose. The ranch had become her home, John had become her anchor, and together they had created a life filled with harmony, love, and fulfillment. As the sun set on another day, John and Ayana often sat together on their favorite hilltop, holding hands and watching the hills and fields bathed in golden light. They spoke of dreams for the future, plans for the ranch, and the joys of everyday life. Sometimes they were silent, simply enjoying the presence of one another, knowing that the bond they shared was steady, enduring, and deeply rooted. In each other they had found a reward far beyond anything they could have imagined, a love that was patient, respectful, and everlasting. In the quiet moments, as stars began to fill the night sky, John thought about how life had surprised him. He had worked hard on the ranch, cared for the animals, and lived honestly and patiently. Yet the greatest reward had come in the form of a partner who enriched every aspect of his life, a woman whose presence made his heart full, his days brighter, and his dreams more meaningful. Yana, sitting beside him, felt the same. The journey that had begun with a chance meeting by the creek had led to a life filled with love, respect, and shared purpose, a life neither had expected but both cherished deeply. Together, John and Ayana faced each day with gratitude, joy, and an unspoken promise to support one another through every challenge and triumph. Their story was one of patience, courage, and the quiet power of love to transform lives. And as they looked out over the hills and fields, hands intertwined, hearts connected, they knew that the unexpected reward, love, companionship, and a shared life, was the greatest treasure they could ever have hoped to find.